So hello and welcome to the Lemurian Telos Zoom. I'm Francisca Siragusa, author, ascension leader, and principal teacher with the Diana Cooper School of White Light. So I'm very grateful and very enthusiastic to be your host this evening. And of course, this event has the aim of raising the consciousness of people and to support Earth shifting into the new golden age. And I'm so happy and feel very honored that Lowell is with us again from California. Hi, Lowell.
Hi, good day. It's good to be here again. I was up a little earlier than I needed to be, but I didn't want to be late.
I know I'm always worried about when I have this kind of events with people from other countries that are somehow, I think, oh my God, if I've got the timing wrong. But we're all here and it's the right time. So Lowell, you are very clear about your mission. So you are a protector of Gaia and emissary of Telos. And you are the only person I know of that actually had access to Telos, and you were able to physically interact with the people there. And so the people in Telos are the Lemurians who left about, thousands of years ago. I think it was about 12,000 years ago, at least according
300,000 years ago, really.
Okay.
Atlantis was thought to have found its demise about 11 or 12,000 years ago. But the Lemurians, 300,000 years ago is when they, started their incarnations here on Earth.
Oh yeah, but I meant when they went to Telos, did they?
Yes, yes, that would be accurate. Yes,
Atlantis. So,
as I understand it,
to Diane Robbins, that was about 12,000 years ago. But
yes,
anyway, everyone seems to have different timelines for things. So you've already been with me in April and you've already told us a lot about that visit, but as there are a lot of new people here, I think we should talk about the highlights again. And I'm sure people want to hear about how you met this guy called Alex, your guide, and what that was like. And yeah, so shall we start there?
We can. That's a good place to start. Lots of things have happened since then, and maybe I should preview this with, I'll have to tell you what I knew about Telos before I was invited to visit it. I didn't know anything about it. Now, clearly, I have had past lives that I've spent there, and many things have come into focus since that trip. But just like we all have triggers that remind us of things that we all already know. The state of the things that we understand, it's not that we're learning new information. We're just recalling things that have been placed in our Akash a long time ago. And right now, that seems to be happening at a more rapid rate with lots of people. To me, it's an indication that the shift is closer, that the reason why these tools are being restored to us is so that we have the ability to raise our vibration to the same place that Earth is. So when ascension comes, which in my opinion is imminent, we'll vibrate at the same level that New Earth will, and we rise with her. We're done learning our 3D lessons, and the planet is no longer going to be 3D anyway. She's rising into fourth dimension, and anything that doesn't vibrate at the same level as we know, just can't make it. That's not a good or bad thing. Someone may hear that news and think that that's a catastrophic thing. Well, it may be for third dimensional people, but they're just going to recycle and finish learning their 3D lessons elsewhere. There are other places to do that, but Earth was very special from the beginning, and that's a whole another rabbit hole. So we won't go there today. So we'll just focus on the Telos visit. I had, as I was saying, when we got on this morning, that I had intended to go to Shasta for about a week. This was 2 years ago when everywhere had been shut down by COVID. I had just made my way back from Louisiana. I was going to close on a house in Las Vegas in February that year. And I decided I was going to go visit my son for about a week in California before. But the whole drive back across the country, I just got this nagging feeling that I wasn't supposed to close on the house. Now, I didn't have a lot of money in escrow, but I had money in escrow and I was within 30 days. So if I was going to change my mind, I was going to lose whatever money I'd put down on the house. And within that next 24 hours, when I was having this debate with myself, it just made sense for me to let it go. Well, 3 days after I got to my son, I got the answer to understand why. Well, when COVID locked everything down, this was not the time to be thinking about moving anywhere, much less, to another state. So when we got to the end of the end of June, things were relaxing a little bit. And it wasn't that I was getting stir crazy inside the house, but I enjoy nature and I need to be outside. So the first opportunity I could get to go do that, that's where I always connect. By this time, over the past few years, I had gotten into a really good meditative regimen. I had a mini stroke in late 2015, and as part of therapy, meditation was suggested. One thing led to another. I learned eventually transcendental meditation, simple, easy, and really the benefits I got out of it almost immediately, Francesca. I thought that my path was going to be, I'm going to go learn how to be an instructor and help others get to the same place I was at. Well, that was a noble thought, but Spirit had a different idea for me and wasn't about to reveal it yet. Anyway, when I got to Shasta and I started to hike around the areas, I'm not the kind that likes to follow everybody's path. There's tons of trailheads all over the mountain that go in different directions to beautiful scenery. But I am one of those people that I can, even before I realized it, I could sense changes in energetic profiles, signatures, if you want to see it that way. And that's what I was looking for. Never mind, I had certainly read all the accounts of what lore there was in Mount Shasta, and that I've come to understand that Saint Germain, that was no legend. He came out of the mountain and met with Guy Ballard, and back in the 30s, had given all this information to Guy, and I don't know how many books he wrote, 9, 10, maybe more, on all the information he was given from Saint Germain in order to help people, perfect their vibrations and, acquire this hunger for energetic signatures. And so that's where it began. That whole movement just caught fire. And so my idea going to Shasta was, if I was going to go off trail, it's just me out here, I'm here alone. I would love for somebody to connect with me in that way, if that's meant for me. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't get to meet Saint Germain. Instead, I got to visit Telos. And so here's what led up to that. The fourth weekend I was there were a few places that I had not seen yet. And that was a mouthful because I had searched all over. There's beautiful waterfalls in those areas that are worth seeing. And those kept me busy. There weren't very many places that I went to, more than once, because I was just interested in finding the next place. So on this particular weekend, there's a place there called the Gateway Peace Garden, and it's beautiful. It's kind of a little sanctuary. There are lots of peace ribbons that have been left there. There's a lavender a labyrinth in the middle of it. I mean, this is a great place for you to start your day. And so that's normally what I did. Well, after I'd finished there, I had decided I was going to go up to, there's one place on the south side of the mountain there's a road that goes all the way up as far as you can take the road. The elevation there's, I think, just shy of 8,000 feet, 7,980, if I remember it correctly. And then there's multiple trailheads that lead off either up the mountain or off to Green Valley. That was an area that I thought I was going to go explore. I had been up to that area many times. When I first got into town, I had, I'm a crystal fanatic. And so I went to seek out all the crystal stores. And while I was there, I had overheard a conversation with some people that live there. And they were talking about, stargazing up at that place. Well, that got my attention, because I'd certainly been in areas along the coast in California before where there was zero light pollution. And when you get to see the starry sky that way and the Milky Way and all its grandeur, you want to see that again. Well, that's what this area in Mount Shasta was like. When somebody said, well, we're going to go up there stargazing tonight. And I was over eavesdropping on them. And I said, well, can anybody do that? And their response was, it's a parking lot. So yes, I spent not only that night, but maybe over the next 10 days, 6 or 7 nights, that I'd just go up there, even if it was until midnight, and just take all that in, because when there wasn't any ground light at all, what you got to see was amazing. And it changed. The first night I went there, it was a new moon. So the moon didn't have any shine to it. And now you got to see the Milky Way the way that you were supposed to see that. On nights where there was a full moon, that's another beautiful thing, but it prevents you from seeing all the stars behind it when that happens. When that phenomenon took place, that was the night I chose. When it was a full moon, I thought, I'm going to turn my chair around. I'm going to actually look at the mountain instead. Because I've heard that there's all this traffic and all this phenomenon that comes and goes from the mountain. Maybe this will be my night to see that. Well, that night was my first night to see that. I had been looking at Shasta, which would have been right in front of me, and Polaris, the North Star, was right over her. Well, as I was looking in that direction, I thought I'd seen a shooting star or two before that. And I was just taking that in because that phenomenon is pretty cool. Until I saw one, what I thought was a shooting star that came almost from where Polaris was, straight down at the mountain. And then it disappeared for a second until it reappeared and went that way. That was no shooting star. So, and the thing that helped me validate it is 2 cars down from me, there was an older couple that was sitting there, and somebody shouted from the car, did you see that? Yes, I did. Thank you very much. We all did. So I had already had that kind of UFO phenomenon settled for me when I was in Sedona. I was there in March the following year, and I had seen plenty of moving lights in the sky. So I'm comfortable that yes, they're here. It's my understanding they're benevolent beings, and they're just waiting until the point where they can step in and assist, because that's what they've been waiting here to do. They're all waiting to assist. We just have to ready ourselves for that point. So after I left the Peace Garden that day, I was gonna go back to this spot that I had described. There's only 4 picnic tables up there because it's not designed for that. It's designed for people to park their cars, get out and go hike. And so when I got there a little bit after noon that day, one of the picnic tables was open. So I went over and sat on it, and I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do for the rest of the weekend. There was one mountain nearby that I had not climbed yet, Black Butte. And so I decided that over the weekend, I was going to knock that out. I'd pick one day and I'd do that. I had read all the accounts of what it was like to do it, and the suggestions were that you shouldn't. Mine, I was hiking alone, shouldn't have. And this mountain is more loose rock, scree than anything else. It was dangerous for me to do that. There was twice during the hike I should have turned around, but I didn't. I'd just gone so far that I wasn't going to turn back now and not complete it. But my recommendation to anybody else that thinks they're going to do, you should not. It just, these two areas where I should have turned around, the scree had just kind of, whatever paths might have been there before, because it's just rock, had slid. And so now I'm trying to gingerly walk over that. I had no business doing that, but that's neither here nor there. It's a beautiful view of Mount Shasta when you get to the top, but it took me longer to get down than it took me to get up. I was fatigued. The whole thing was 6 hours. And that day when I got back to my room, I'd started it at 10 o'clock in the morning, got back to my car by 4:30. By 6:15, like I'd showered, I'm in bed, and the first day I'm fatigued. And so I was thinking that the next day, what I had planned to do the next day, I was going to put on hold. So I should probably go back and tell you what that was. As I was sitting on that picnic table, I was looking back at Shasta, and Mount Shastina, which is just to her left, was starting to, the sun was almost directly over her. And so now you can see the mountain, and it looks as though where clearly there were some shadows that were being cast because of the way that the sun was hitting the mountain. Now they almost look like cave openings. Well, I love caves. I grew up in St. Paul down by the Mississippi River. We spent lots of time in caves down there. We knew where they all were and what we did there. So I was curious about that. So when I had made that decision on Friday, I was going to go hike Black Butte on Saturday, and then Sunday I'll come back here, because from where I was sitting, it didn't look like it was going to take that long to get there. But where I wanted to go and explore was going to be off trail. So that night when I had finished the trip and was exhausted by the trip to Black Butte, the next morning I get up at about 7 o'clock every morning anyway. It's just kind of how my body is wired. And I always meditate for about 20 minutes, and then the rest of my day is pretty much set. Well, I'd done that at 7, and I rolled over with every intent to just lay in bed. Maybe I'll watch TV later, but I'm good here. By 10 o'clock, I was antsy. Whatever energy needed to be restored seemed to be, because my guides were like kicking my little butt out, told me get dressed and get back to the mountain. So a little before noon, I was right back to that spot I was at. I didn't expect to be there that day, but here I am anyway. So I started from where I had parked. I had taken a picture of the direction that I was going in from the car, because I wanted later, this whole journey, everything that had come along, it had always been made sense to me to journal the things that were happening. I mean, I was getting profound thoughts in my head that even surprised me. And I thought, I'm going to jot these things down, put them in a little text file, and tuck them away until later, maybe they'll serve a purpose. And I am crazy about taking pictures everywhere that I go, because I just like to reflect on that phenomenon later on. So I'd taken that picture, and then I started my hike. The trail that I was going to take is called Old Ski Bowl Trail. And it's actually the site of an avalanche that had happened there in 1995. So it wasn't that long ago. And you can see the trail that this thing left in its wake. Mm-hmm. So I crawled over that. Most people follow that trail and hike up the mountain. I was going in a different direction because there were things that I wanted to see that didn't follow that path. So there was another little path that kind of followed along Shastina on the left-hand side. Rarely did I see anybody take it. And nobody seemed to be traveling to the areas that I was interested in. So off I went. When I got to the area that I was interested in exploring, I started to go off trail. And again, there it's nothing but loose rock. So it takes you a while, because every 2 steps you gain really one, because you're going to slip back a little bit on the way up. But eventually I found these areas I was describing to you earlier, where there's like lots of greenery around these. There's like rock enclosures with trees inside of them, and they look like they should mean something, but it was so different from the rest of the terrain there that this greenery part just looked unusual. Well, when you got near them, even then, in the state of, you know, whatever energetic signature I had, I could feel it back then. I could tell that there was something special about it. And as a light worker, it had already been planted in my head that we were here to plant light. We're here to connect source with Gaia, and that's your job. We don't really go to Mount Shasta seeking something from the mountain, although it's always an energy exchange and I always get something. But I am a light worker. I'm supposed to be assisting planting light here. And so everywhere I go, I do that first.
I love that. I really like that.
It's what our job is supposed to be. When I got closer to this area, I had found one of those energetic areas, and I was going to stand there and just kind of take it in, because there's something palpable, physical about what I'm suggesting here. And it wasn't that I didn't live most of my life kind of immune to that, or I don't want to say dulled to the idea, but something is awakening in not just me and everybody. And that sensibility within us to understand, you know, feeling energetic signatures is awakening in a lot of other people, and at a rapid rate. In my case, things have happened so fast that it's been hard to keep up with it. And when I finish telling you this miraculous visit to Telos, you're going to think, oh my God, that's crazy. But over the last 2 years, that was the first miraculous thing that happened. And it was to get my attention, because other things were going to happen after that I didn't see coming either. So let's go back to Telos. As I was standing in this first little spot that I had found this energy, I was going to stand there and take it in, and then immediately off to my left and up a little bit higher, I saw another one that looked similar. Well, I liked the difference in elevation, so I stepped over to that, and I was getting ready to, you know, just take this space in, and then I noticed one more spot that almost was against the mountain. And there were 3 boulders that came out and almost made like this little enclosure. And when I got up next to it, I could see that this boulder on the left-hand side was a little bit higher than my inseam, but I could get up over it because it was relatively narrow. The other 2 were pretty good sized boulders, but once you crawled over it, oh my God, there's a pretty good little space here, maybe 8 feet square. And so I first looked back in the direction that I came from. There was nobody in my area, but I could see off in the distance the parking lot and where I had come from. I planted my light there like I always do. And then I sat down. And when I sat down, there's nobody that is going to know that I'm here. You wouldn't be able to see anybody that was there. So I had some water and some grapes in a backpack, and I was sitting, finishing those. I was listening to music on my iPad, my phone, and my ear pods were in. And all of a sudden, after I had put the food away, the music stopped. And so I kind of sat up because my phone's in my back pocket. When I pulled it out, it didn't look like there was any power. Well, it didn't make any sense because it was fully charged when I left the car. So as I was trying to turn it back on, I started to sense, I want to call it like a shadow. So there was a shadow that from where I was sitting on the ground was coming and like moving this way. And at the same time, I'm getting the same sensation that's like coming this way, like almost like a canopy. And as soon as I was trying to figure that out, I felt the breeze come from behind me. And when I turned around, there was a hole where I had just been resting against the rock not moments ago. The only thing that was between the mountain and I was just some dried brush, whatever was there, but that's what I had been leaning on moments before. All of a sudden, there's an opening.
Oh, wow.
So I stood up to look at it, and you could tell from where I was, there was like a little rise that came up and then it went downward. Later, it would make sense to me that this is probably a volcanic tube because, a lava tube, because there's nothing but volcanoes all over the area here. It would make sense to see that. When I stood up and my eyes began to adjust to what I was seeing, it looked like there was somebody down there. And then I heard someone ask me, do you wish to see Telos? When you get a little excited and a little anxious, but look, I'm crazy to see things I've never seen before. And I didn't know anything about what was about to take place. So I started to make my way down. And as I got closer to this being who initially I thought was, adult size, maybe my size, I'm 6 feet tall. When I got close enough to see this being, he was at least 2 feet taller than I was, like heads above me, was dressed in a white, I guess robe is what you'd call it, but he had these colored ribbons. And, I continue to say this because I don't know what else it was. One day I'll ask. I didn't know if that was just some kind of decoration or bling, or whether that was indicative of some kind of rank that he held. Anyway, he said, well, you can call me Alex. And I said, well, that'll be easy to remember because that's my son's name. He said, yeah, we know about your son. Follow me.
Do you think he purposely chose the name of your son, or do you think that is really his name?
That's a good question. And when I see him again, I will ask him that. I don't know. So as we were making our way down this slope, I could start to see that there was light coming from the other end. And when we got close enough where this opened up, I had looked back behind me to see where we'd come from. And whatever opening I had, whatever light might have been produced from it, that was gone. There wasn't any light that was behind me anymore. So when we got to this space, all of a sudden this tube opened up into an area with a lot of light. I want to call it like a staging area because I'm not quite sure how else to describe it, but there were 5 more of these tube openings across from us. And as we first came in, immediately to my left-hand side, there was a platform. It was about 6 foot by 6 foot and had what I want to call 2 bucket seats on it. There was another one off to the left over there, and there was another one off to the right over there. And as I was kind of taking this all in, Alex had made his way to the seat on the other side and had sat down and indicated for me to sit next to him. So when I did, and my butt hit that seat, this thing started to levitate and off we went.
So how much space was there for people to sit? I mean, how many people could travel together?
This is just a little square pod with 2 spots on it.
Okay,
and
just 2 spots.
we took off through the middle tube. That the sensation that you get is even when you brush your hand by, you feel the wind that causes. There were no sensations like that. You could tell we were going somewhere, but whatever that sensation was in this realm, I wasn't experiencing it. In the meantime, Alex is beginning to describe the nature of, what the city is, how many levels there are. There's 5 levels in the city. I wasn't going to see them all today. I would see 2 of them. He went on to describe King and Queen. He described who the council was and what role they played. There are 12 members of the council, where there's actually 13. Adama is the 13th. But that whole idea that the other 12, it was meant to be a perfect spiritual balance of 6 feminine and 6 masculine. They're all about balance, and they understand it and respect one another as a result of it. Those people that sit on the council are those whose spirituality, consciousness has risen to the place where that's their kind of role, is to support others. I don't really know that they have much governing to do. They all live understanding that they're connected to one another and that the law of one prevails there. So from that perspective, I don't know what there would be to govern.
Do you know what the roles of the king and the queen are?
Yeah, they're ultimate rulers. But I don't know what role they play. I focus more on my intention to understand what the council was and who they were, and that was going to be my interaction. I have much more interest in pursuing it now because I have the time to do that. And something really happened this summer that triggered my awareness that if I had had the ability to go back since the trip and communicate with Lemurians, I either ignored it or I just wasn't aware of it. When the conditions are right and you've had that connection with them before, you can do it again. I just had to be in a place where the conditions were right. I had to find a quiet spot where I was alone and put my intent on it. And oh my God, here I was back in a place that was very familiar to me again. So let's go back to what I got to see when I was there. So we were going through this tube and we were getting close to the other end. And again, we were beginning to see light come from the other side. There's clearly crystals in these tubes. And as you move through it and the light hits it and refracts it, it's like a little light show. And the closer you got to the end where it was brighter, it was like a living kaleidoscope. I didn't want it to end. But just about the time that we came through this hole, then now I can see the entire city of Telos. And he takes this, whatever this craft is, up to, you've seen these photographs of cityscapes. This is what I get to see. Wow. Telos is circular in its design. Everything is crystalline in its pattern. And it's incredible.
Were you higher up? That you were higher up and you could see down onto it? And those tubes you mentioned, were they also made of crystal or they just contained crystal?
I think that they were just, they were lined in there. There's a lot of quartz that's in that area. And I'm coming to understand that more and more. But I'd had an idea about Black Butte. If you've been to that area before, if you drive up I-5, you drive right by Black Butte, you can't miss it. It's a little sister to it. But when I looked at it off in the distance, it had always occurred to me that if you could just kind of knock off the rock, you'd see the tip of a crystal, because that's what the shape looks like to me. And in my opinion, I believe that Black Butte is nothing but a huge quartz amplifier for the energy that the mountain puts out. That's what I believe. So that would explain why you would see a lot more quartz crystal. And I'm not sure what the source of Lemurian crystal is, but I understand that to be a quartz, manifestation as well.
Okay.
Did you want to ask a question? I'll pause for a moment.
No. I was just asking about the tubes. So
okay.
The tubes, what they were made of.
Okay. So when we were finishing and he was describing, what the area was, we had kind of whatever this craft was brought it down again. And so we're kind of hovering a little bit more over the building. So I can see, there's, pockets of people here and there. Party of 2 here, party of 3 over there. And when we got close enough that I could make eye contact with, 5 or 6 of them, it was as though I knew who they were. And not just that, they knew who I was. There was a familiarity in a face that was like I'd been here before. And I wasn't quite sure what to do with that. But later on, that'll be important. There were 2 people after this endeavor that I've seen here that were 2 of the faces I had seen that day. Anyhow, when he took me down to the 3rd level, which is where their hydroponic gardens are. And allegedly this is 7 acres of incredible technology. There's no earth, they're nourished by crystal infused water. It's magnificent. And when I first saw it, even back then, and I understood, the story of, who got there, how they got there, how many of them were there, it made me wonder can this really feed this entire population? It had been suggested that back when the preparations were made, when they knew that Lemuria was about to collapse, they had made provisions to move whatever records, crystals, whatever they thought was important, they had moved into the mountain, and they had made provisions for at least 200,000 others. Now, in the end, it seemed like there were 25,000 that really made it before the collapse just happened so suddenly that no one else really made it. Now, that's not to say, because it's been said to now, and it's certainly reasonable that over time, more of them would have, been there. And they've said that there's like 1.2 million of them. You want to believe that the entirety of Telos covers about 25 square miles in the way that we understand it. Now, I didn't see that, but that's how it had been presented to me. It would certainly make sense. What it made me wonder was, even though these plants can perpetuate themselves so rapidly under those circumstances, I still wondered whether it could feed the population. Well, then there was a couple other things that kind of came into play later on that helped me understand things maybe more vividly. And that they're no longer carbon bodies. They're light bodies. Those are crystalline. And this is what we have to look forward to. We're already mutating at a cellular level for our DNA to open itself up and turn this physical being, when the shift happens, into a crystalline form. And under those circumstances, you no longer have this carbon-based thing to maintain. It doesn't wear out like theirs do. I can't tell you how old they are, hundreds, thousands of years. They just look flawless. And it wasn't until later, when all this kind of came together, that you understood that crystalline forms don't break down that way. And then my guides finally led me to believe, Lowell, they don't eat because they need to eat to sustain themselves. They eat because they enjoy eating. They get what energy they need to exchange from the sun and that solar thing. We understand we're all electromagnetic beings. They embrace the idea, they get it. And in their crystalline form, it's still sinking into me what that means. But here's what it means for us. We've been influenced, as the Earth has, by enhanced photon energy that's coming from our central sun, and has been nourishing the planet. And it will be one of the reasons that she ascends into her next state of consciousness. Every sentient being that's on the Earth is being bathed by the same light. That's exactly what it is. And it's storing itself in every sentient being here, so that when the time comes, that DNA activation is going to change your physical being. And so when the time comes for you to enjoy new Earth in its new consciousness, your form also is the same. And you'll be able to appreciate and live in that environment. Go ahead.
Can I ask, there's a question actually just come through to me about what you've said. And what Yasmin would like to know is whether you can actually touch them. So if you touch someone with a crystalline body, is there a sense of touching, or is it just like you're going through light?
It's physical. It's physical. And even in that form, I'm still in physical form. Now, I know that's a lot to try and wrap your head around. And even I had trouble, kind of figuring out, until I put dimensionality into perspective and really understood what that was. My ability to go to Telos the way that I did means that I've got 1 foot in the next realm and still 1 foot that's here. And as I make those transitions, it gets harder and harder to come back the third. It just, your vibration has to drop in order to do that. And it's physically exhausting. Never mind, you know, what the world is going through and all the chaos that's here. You know, Earth was built to be an experiment. This wasn't supposed to be, she wasn't designed as a planet per se that was going to sustain life. Over time, when she was developing, all of this had taken place. And, you know, we'll find a day maybe to talk about galactic history and how we found ourselves in the third dimension and stuck where we are, but we're no longer stuck. And I think everyone that's here, if you're on the other side of the screen from me today, you already know that what is coming and that what we're being prepared for. You know, we call it awakening because I don't know if there's a better word for it, but something is coming back to our recall that we've always had, reminding us of things we've always known. And so here is one example of that. When I got to kind of reflect back on Telos later, and I'm not taking anything away from this magical, miraculous experience, it was the first thing that source was going to show me that was miraculous. And it was to influence the idea that, Lowell, your job isn't to tell people about your Telos experience. That's the hook. It's to help them explain dimensionality and where their role in is it. And this was one of my first multidimensional experiences. It wasn't going to be the last one, but it's an important one. It's important for a couple of reasons. One, that we are so busy now, and even with as much disclosure as we understand that we're getting about things that our government or whatever entities have known about extraterrestrial beings, technologies, and we've apparently had that at our disposal for a while. It's been hidden from us, unfortunately. But you can see when they say that the veils are all being drawn back, here's good examples of why I had my experience and why people are having their experiences, because we're all starting to touch the dimension we're about to rise into. And we're just preparing the way for everyone else who vibrates at the same level and is ready for it as well. There were a couple of things that I should probably mention that I neglected to when I first came into, you know, the Telos space. When I looked up to see if I could see the ceiling for whatever this cavity was, I could not see the top. And yet it was lit like it was as brilliant as daylight. Now, there was no beams of light coming from anywhere. So someone's going to have to explain to me. It appears as though they've mastered, you know, their crystal technology, and that provided the light source for it. Because when I reflected more on my memories, there wasn't a shadow that was cast by any of that light. So
no shadows.
No, crazy. So once we had finished seeing the third level, and it wasn't, he had explained what was on the other levels, we didn't get to visit them. The first level that we were on was actually, that's where most of the people live. That's where administrative things, there are multiple temples that are there. And in the middle of this area, I don't know why I didn't tell you this already, is the huge, impressive white pyramid. And on the top of it was a capstone. When I saw it, the day I saw it, it was white. It was just impressive. It said that it's big enough to hold 10,000. You know, I have no way of validating that, but that's what I've been led to understand. When I had an opportunity to sit with Diane, my friend Diane Robbins, Diane shared something with me about the capstone that I didn't know before. I had been told it had been gifted to them by Venus, but what Diane said, that, and she'd never put it in any of her books, so I kind of get to give you a little bit of a special thing that I didn't know. That changed, the capstone's color changes with the day of the week. I was there on Sunday. Sunday's white. Had it been Wednesday, it would have been green. Had it been Saturday, it would have been purple. I had no idea, but Diane was wonderful enough to share that information with me.
And what is the purpose of this pyramid? Do you know that?
I think it's just their master temple. But as we all begin to understand, pyramids are not just, they're not made for occupying, and they're not really made for sarcophaguses. These are all energetic transmitters. That's what purpose they serve here. And in Earth's realignment, when Earth first sat where she was, there were 12 crystal pyramids that were placed in her strategically around the planet to spread this energetic grid, not just all over the planet, but to realms beyond. And when we understand that those crystal pyramids are all in the process of realignment now, that Earth is about to ascend and everything is going to be put in its place and working the way that it should be. It's been a while since she's been out of sorts, but that's come over time from a variety of influences. It wasn't that we don't get hit by the occasional meteor and comets that go by that certainly have an effect on where we are in the cosmos. Those things have had to play out, but Earth is about to ascend in her cycle, like everything else is ascending. It's her time to move, and so we're all waking up in preparation for that time.
Do you think there is a special connection between Telos and Venus?
Well, Venus has a soft spot for all of Earth. She kind of provides love for all of us.
Yeah.
But the Lemurians definitely had a connection with her. So when we finished that, we had made our way back up to the first level. I started to describe what was on the other levels, and I kind of forgot where we were. I'm so sorry. The second level had additional housing for those people that were there. What schools they might have would be on that level. The third level was hydroponics. The fourth was some manufacturing, whatever manufacturing you could think that they would have. And then the fifth level was, think of the most beautiful park you've ever seen, with all the flora and fauna that some has been on the surface before and some has not. All the animals that have been here on Earth, some that have been on the surface and some that have not. They are all residing on this fifth level, waiting for the time that they can commune again with surface beings. So when that time comes, we're going to be able to see things that we never saw before. That some things that were designed for the surface of the planet that had never made its way there yet. But again, this is all just getting the surface prepared for those things that vibrate at a higher level in order for them to occupy that space. Does that make sense?
It does, of course, honoring all the kingdoms, the animals, plants, everything is all part of the ascension process to understand that.
Yes.
So how did you move from one level to another by levitating? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we were on whatever that craft was, whatever you want to call it. I think I'll need to find out a name for it because I've told this story so many times that I'll have to ask what I should refer it to as now that I know that I have the ability to do that. So by this point, we had made our way back up to the first level. And when we had come into this space, I had noticed that there was kind of a round crystal building that I had first seen that got my attention. Well, this is where we were heading back. And when we got to this space and got off this craft, there was an entryway. This building was formed by, flat crystal, and it was kind of round in form. There was an opening that would have been the equivalent of like, French doors, but there were no doors. On these two crystal panels, there were etchings in there that looked very familiar to me. When I had first got to Shasta that first day, I got there too late to hike, so I just thought I was going to explore the city and see what was there. And among the things I explored was a little shop called Blue Star Child Gallery. And some of you have heard my story. Some of you have been to Shasta, know who Haruko is. This is a gifted little Japanese oracle, if you ask me. I had visited her shop and had seen these drawings that she had done, and they're amazing. They were 10 feet tall, 3 feet wide, perfectly symmetrical. And when she draws these, she doesn't do it with the benefit of a ruler or some kind of a curvature tool. They're all hand drawn, perfectly symmetrical. And then she goes back to color them. They take months. Well, her shop is lined with these. These are codes that she's been given, told to illustrate. Now, when you get to see the other parts of her place, where the creative side of her comes out and her affection for bunnies, that's a whole nother gift that she possesses. But these codes are impressive. If you make your way through her shop, there's a room in the back that's made for meditative purposes. And it holds 5 of these. So the first day I went, I didn't stop the first day I visited. I went back a few days later to explore a little in greater detail. But when I found that room, I was carrying 3 crystals with me. And I thought, you know, I just feel like I want to put those crystals underneath these and sit in the room to meditate. So I went out to ask Haruko, it would be okay if I sit back there for about 10 minutes and meditate? She says, that's what it's for. So actually I came out 20 minutes later after sitting in a room with these powerful codes. I was in tears when I came out. There was just whatever expression needed to come out of me was going to come out of me in that form. But I had seen something there that was profound. So let's now move to Telos, where I see these etchings. I look at Alex and I said, these look familiar to me. He goes, yeah, those are Haruko's. They're accurate. The one on the left is New Earth, and the one on the right is the new angelic code. It's the new human blueprint. So when I left this room, the New Earth one was to the left of the door I came in her space, and the angelic code was the one on the right. So when I saw these etched in this crystal, that was on the outside of this room. So we moved into the room, which it's circular. There's crystals lining the walls, and they provide different light sources. There's a round table in the middle of it with 13 chairs around it. It's the only thing here that I've seen that's made out of wood, but it has some crystals embedded into it as well. As soon as I stepped into the space, I could feel something in my heart core that felt like the most magnificent hug you've ever received. And it just, the whole time I was in this space, it just like pressed into me. And you couldn't ignore it.
Wow.
It made me wonder, you know, if this is where the council meets and, you know, they have to make decisions on, you know, things that are good for their collective. I guess here's the way to soften everybody up on the way in the room when they've just pulsed into your heart core. So whatever it was, I hope one day to be able to articulate it in the proper way so that people can actually feel that for themselves, because it was energetically palpable. You felt that energy in your being.
Feel it as you're talking about it. So that means all decisions will be heart-based decisions, aren't they? All
it
decisions.
Is. Well, we can go into that whole where humanity is going and how she's recovering. And it's all because when she was separated, when humanity, you know, fell the way that they fell, here is where the disconnection took place. If you want to pay attention that there might have been some dark energy that had their way and helped influence the fall, this is where they had their impact. It separated our humanness, these parts of our chakras, to the parts above that connected us back to source. Well, the reason why all of us are reconnecting the way that we did is our heart core is being recalled, regenerated, restored, however you want to see that. That connection connecting me to source is complete. I see that somebody talked about when your Kundalini rises, that creates your rainbow bridge. That's how I like to see that. All of your chakras are working and spinning the way that they're supposed to. Your alignment is complete. And when your alignment is complete, you get to experience things in higher realms. That is how I got where I got, gang. My alignment was perfect. My vibration was high enough to be able to have these experiences with beings that vibrate at that level. You all of you that are here today, I know have that same capability within you. And so my guides have told me my job moving forward is to assist the rest of you to get to that same place, to help your vibration rise in whatever way that works for you. Because mind you, we are all on different journeys, all of us guys. It's unlikely you're going to go to Telos the same way I did, because that was meant for me. That's not to say that you can't. And so I want to go back to what they had begun to say. I'll come back. Let's finish in the room, because as I was taking in this sensation, 5 more people enter the room. And I can tell that Adama, who I hadn't met, but based on photographs or illustrations I've seen, that's who he is. And he's taller than the 4 beings that he's flanking. I can tell that these other 4 are feminine. And so as they get closer, they invite me to take a seat. And then 3 of them take seats on one side, and then 3 of them take seats on the other side from me. And they begin to introduce themselves and tell me a little bit who they are. Regrettably, I can remember Alex's name. I remember Adama, and I remember the first woman who spoke, Shyama, because from that point on, she seemed to be the one that was going to chair this meeting. She was going to, do the presentation, and the others, I just don't remember their names. So you look like you were going to ask a question.
Council members?
Yes.
So
yes, they were.
This place where you were meeting, was that like a council hall or a temple?
It's the main council chamber.
Main council chamber. And they were all dressed in white because you were there on a Sunday?
They were that day, that's right. Now, Adama had some other kind of sash across him, and I don't know what that was indicative of, but it was also white, so it wasn't colored. That was the only way that he was different from anybody else in his apparel.
And did you get a sense of what the clothing was made of? No. And do you think the clothing changes on a different day automatically, or they have to put on something else?
That's a good question. That one that I had asked, and I was only there on the one day, so I have no frame of reference. But believe me, it'll be things I'm interested in exploring more. I really want to know more about the details. I want to know what's there, and they want us to know too. So that's what I was going to say. There were 2 things. Well, let's finish in the room here first, and then I can come back. Because I keep losing my place. And it's about what the Lemurians want for us. And that'll really be better suited at the end of this particular leg of the story. Shyama began to explain why I was here and what I was going to be doing there. She had explained that the Lemurians in Telos also believe that the shift is imminent. And as I had been led to believe then, they thought it was imminent around winter solstice 2020. Everything that I had come to understand had led me to the same conclusions. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I didn't think it was a particular date, but it just seemed like from an equinox kind of standpoint, it looked like that certainly made sense to me. The vibrations made sense to me. And what was going on the earth all made sense to me. The solar disturbances that are coming from the sun all made sense to me. So I was thrilled to hear them say that, because it aligned with what I believed. She went on to say that once the shift was going to, once it took place, they would be in a place to reintegrate with Earth. I'm sorry, the beings that are on the surface. And that's what they're interested in again. They have technologies they wish to share with us. And it wasn't that humans weren't without merit. Look, our creativity comes from our emotion. That's what makes us unique in the galaxy. No one else has free will, and no one else are sovereign beings like we are. We were given this gift as an experiment to see how it would fly with humanity. And humanity had lessons to learn along the way. This was part of what it was. So then she explained, why I was there. She said, first of all, you've already demonstrated you can hold fifth dimensional awareness. So you understand the concepts we're talking about. The idea that we're all connected to one another, that the law of love prevails here, and that duality, it's not that we don't recognize it, but we see beyond it. And we understand as a collective what we do in order to overcome it. They look at it that way. Where here on Earth, that was part of the experiment. We're here to learn good and bad. That's how we learn contrast. That's how we experience physicality. That's why we came here. But we're done with third dimensional lessons. And we're about to move back up, because if we intend to stay with the planet, she is moving. It's not that collectively humanity decided they were all finally going to kumbaya together and our collective energy would propel the Earth to its next level. That's not how it works. We're sentient critters on the planet. And if our vibration matches hers, we ascend along with her. And again, hers is a cosmic cycle we're in. This isn't a choice. This is just the way that the cosmos is moving. So then she said, two, we know you're the protector of Gaia. And I don't even know where they came up with that, because that was a phrase that was uttered in an ayahuasca journey I had been on 2 years before, where in that journey, I had been told that's who I was and been given an idea of what to expect. And I didn't know 2 years ago what any of that meant, what they were trying to show me. Until later, when you kind of assimilate these things and the dots connect, that's when, things start to make sense to you. They won't make sense to your other three-dimensional friends, but they're making sense to me now. Then they said the third one was that when the shift was imminent, they had hoped that I would serve as an emissary and be here on this side to help reintegrate with surface beings for the reasons that I just described. Mm-hmm. Well, I was flattered isn't the word, humbled isn't the word, the thoughts, why me, flash in your head, but you never ever dare say those words out loud. And then Adama had said something about how the council was unanimous in their position, and that they'd hoped that when the time came, I would agree to be an emissary. I said that I would be honored. And with that, the meeting was over. They clearly got what they wanted out of the meeting, and they left. So Alex and I got back on, left the room, got back onto this pod, made our way back to that staging area. And this whole time, I had just been taking it in. I know later on, this is going to mean something to me, and I'll put it together then, but just keep your mouth shut, take in what you're supposed to take in, and then later on, we'll figure out what it all means. What I did have 2 questions before I depart here. And so I got an opportunity to ask Alex. The first question was, can I tell anybody that I was here? They said, you can tell anybody you want. It's not like they're going to find their way here any more than you did without our assistance. And the other was, would I be able to return? Said, yes, you'll be able to return before the shift. Well, that didn't really answer any questions for me. It was kind of nebulous. The thing is, they want us to know that they're here. They want us to know that they are surrounding us right now in a vibration that we have yet to experience. I can go there because I can vibrate at that level. And so I'm here to tell you that the rest of you have it in you to do that same thing if you focus on that. I'm sure that most of your vibration already, you wouldn't be sitting and listening to any of this unless your vibration was already at that level, and that you're looking for other touchstones. Who can help me go through what I went through? Imagine what that was like for me when that was all over. When I somehow found my way back to the parking lot and looked around at these cars and families and couples and people that were here, had no freaking idea what I just went through. I went back to town. I was going to go to Haruko's shop to see if I couldn't find somebody that could help me understand this. Her shop was closed. Went back to the crystal room where I'd met Bev, and got her attention long enough to have this conversation with her. Now it's the middle of the afternoon still, we're not done. She's got customers in the store. So I'm kind of waiting off into the side until I can get her attention to tell her what had happened. So when I had that opportunity, she looked at me like it was no big deal. Like this happens all the time. Now, maybe it did for her, but I didn't know anybody else that I had ever heard of walking on the planet that had the experience I just had. It was kind of unfulfilling. So I went back to my room and started to Google everything I could find on Telos in Lemuria. And eventually I stumbled over Asara Adams, who's been channeling Lemurians and Adama and higher beings for a while now. And she, didn't come by that path easy either. If you heard and understood who she was a very successful real estate person in Florida before any of this happened with her. So now she lives in Shasta and has been channeling Adama for a while. Mm-hmm. I had found contact information on her website and left a phone message. However, she received it on the other end on what that sounded like. I'm not quite sure what it would have been, but she, bless her heart, she called me back 45 minutes later. And for 2 hours, we spent time on the phone so that I could find a touchstone. Who can help me understand what this is I just went through and help me understand it for myself? Well, she was that for me. There were a few things that happened there that helped, and over time it was going to validate itself more. That toward the end of the conversation, she said, I'm going to tell you, Lowell, that I'm pretty certain that your story is legitimate, and here's why I'm going to say that I've been shown many things about Telos, been there many times on astral travels, and I have an understanding of what it is and what it looks like. You describe things that I have seen that I have never said out loud before. So I know that what you're telling me is authentic and that you've been there. Well, that felt good to hear that day, but it was going to be months before I really ingested all that and could comprehend what it meant.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I will take a break.
Yes. And
so that was Telos, phase 1. Mm-hmm. It took a while for all that to sink in. And then what exposure I was supposed to get from it was about to begin. If any of you know Reuben Langdon and the work that he does, he has been a researcher since 2007. Reuben had been a stuntman, and so he kind of understood Hollywood and design. He worked on Avatar and understood that. So in 2007, he had gone out around noontime and had seen 3 like triangles up in the sky, and they didn't look normal. And he said, when they all moved in unison, I knew that this was something else. And so he made it his mission from that point on to see what he could learn about all this phenomenon. So since then, he has been interviewing people that have had extraordinary experiences. Some have been channelers, some have been contactees. And then I come along. And it wasn't Ruben, I found out a few days later, had heard about my experience. And he was actually on his way to Shasta to interview Asara for one of these episodes. He's done 3 seasons of 16 or 18 episodes. He was working on season 3 when I came across him. When he had heard about the story, he wanted to see if there was a way that we could get together. And I had left like 3 days earlier. So this wasn't going to be opportunity, but we began a dialogue that was going to materialize finally the following April. Now, remember, COVID is still hanging a shadow over all of this. So the idea that any kind of production was going to take place was unknown at the time. You know, how, where, why, any of that was going to take place, I didn't know. So it turned out that by the time we got to in March, I had done a presentation in Sedona for the first time. And that was phase 1 of an activation that was going to complete itself in Shasta in April. When I got there in April, I expected that there was this window of time. Ruben was going to be there for a week, April 10th through the 17th, if I remember the dates right. And I had a 4-day window that I could be there as well. So I was going to arrive on the 11th. I'd be leaving on Thursday by noon, but there was plenty of time to get done what we wanted to get done. What I found when I got there the first morning, and I had not met Ruben other than talking to him on the phone, done some Zoom sessions with him before, I didn't know what to expect. So when I got to this place at 9 o'clock in the morning on this Monday where we were going to all get together, that was when I met Bill Holman. Bill Holman is the keeper of the Mitchell Hedges skull, crystal skull. And I was going to be reintroduced to this.
Did you ever get a response from him whether I can interview him?
I did not, but I hadn't heard from him. I just found out recently that he got married. So that may have something to do with his unavailability.
Okay.
I had reached out to him, I think the week before last, because I was putting the final touches on some pictures I wanted to put in this book, and some of them had Bill in them. And so that was the way that I got to talk to him. I will reach out again because it's important for everyone to kind of, hear what Bill has and who he is. But look, the bottom line is that it's rare and a special thing for someone to get to sit in front of that crystal skull once. Over those 4 days, I was going to get to do it 3 times. Who gets to do that? I don't know. When I had first seen him, we had been chatting for a while, and then Bill got up and went over to this side of the room, and there's a small table. And he takes out of his knapsack this crystal skull. Now, all I can see it out of my peripheral, right? But as soon as I could see it on the table, like, I've seen this before. And it wasn't until I sat in front of it the second time that I realized where it was. Because the first time, he does it in such a way that when Bill guides you, and he's wonderful that way, it's a real gift to be able to help someone connect to an artifact like that without your intent getting, in there. So that we want to remove ourselves as the shaman from anything that might influence your visit, and just kind of allow it to happen. Well, he's really good at that. So when you sit in these sessions with Bill, the skull's always facing him first. And then you'll feel its energy. He said, I want you to put your hands next to it. And as you feel its energy expand, just let your arms keep going. Well, my arms were like out here. And he said, well, keep going. I said, my arms don't go any further. That was the energy this thing was putting off. So then he had spun it around in me. So the eyes are facing me. And it's the moment I could see that, I could see how easy it would be to drift off into some other space, dimension, timeline, whatever it was, very easily. Well, I was well aware of what was going around me at the time. There's 12 other people in the room. for this production. And I thought, this is probably not the time for me to go drift off, because God knows when I would come back, and that's not fair to the rest of the people that are here. So it wasn't that day that I let myself go. It was the third time outside that the opportunity to finally just let it go. And yes, I'd had my hands around that thing in Atlantis.
Wow.
So you see what I mean by the next miraculous thing that comes along? That was the next thing last April. So do you want to stop here for a little bit, or do you want me to continue and tell you about what happened with Kumu and the light beings?
Well, yeah, tell us a bit what happened.
Well, I didn't know if someone had some other questions about Telos or Lemuria before we move forward.
We invite people now to ask questions in the chat box. So anyone was...
I can't see the chat box, so if you'll repeat them, I'll respond in whatever way I can.
I will read them out, no problem. No question there yet, but let me have a look at my question. I was going to ask you a little bit about immortality. How would you define immortality? Is it able to determine how long to stay in a specific incarnation? Is that how you would define it? Someone's making a noise here.
Here's where I hope that most people that are here, and I'm sure most of them do, understand that this right here, this is an avatar. This is my biosuit for this incarnation. If we believe in reincarnation, it stands to reason we've had lots of past lives. Our soul is what occupies this little biosuit. It's our soul, and that is immortal. If we believe that we're a spark of source that's snapped off, and our job is to assist the universe in evolving by learning lessons that were good, bad, that's our contributions. It fills my Akashic records, and eventually it contributes to the entire collective. So from that perspective, we're all mortal. We're just stuck in this little biosuit right here in the third dimension, and most people don't understand that I'm much more than this. So that part of it is immortal.
Exactly. I mean, that's, yeah, of course, the soul is always immortal. But I was asking more specific about how, like the Lemurians, that they stay in the same body for thousands of years, apparently. I mean, what is the secret? Is it just the consciousness? Is the consciousness enough? If you have a consciousness which doesn't include aging or sickness, is that enough?
Well, I'm sure that they would say that, and that's very true. You know, somebody posed the idea of med beds and how wonderful that's going to be for humanity. And here's, I'm going to give you my perspective. Do you know how many treatment facilities and med bed possibilities I saw while I was in Telos? Yeah, there aren't any. You know, whatever disease that we've had here, we've created for ourselves. These carbon bodies are real fragile. They weren't meant to last. And that's just part of who humanity was and part of our evolution process as well. This physical body, this is what's going through changes. And it wasn't like they didn't go through those changes too. We all kind of evolve in the same fashion. They have just accelerated theirs to crystalline form already. That's where we're all going. And crystalline is, you know, that's the last physical presence that we'll have in this form. Because as I understand, once you reach 6th and 7th dimensional, you're still a light body and you can take form, but it's no longer necessary.
So when we have 5th dimensional crystalline bodies, will we still have bones?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I will get an answer for that because I'm curious about it too, but I don't think so. I don't know. So I don't want to begin to speak as though I have an authority over that kind of information. I will ask the questions because I'm curious about it. And really, I'm fascinated with our conversion to crystalline. Fascinated by it. I really want to understand it more. I know that there are things that I've had that have accelerated that process within me, so I can tell if something's changing. It's not just our awareness awakening things that are in our Akashic records. It's our form is also changing. As I explained before, it's mutating at a cellular level because of this light energy that is coming and bathing the planet and all of us as well.
Okay, so thank you for that. There are more questions here now. So Sean Barnett is asking, do they speak of the solar flash that everyone up here seems to think is imminent?
There will be some type of phenomenon that'll be just like that. I came to that conclusion 2 years ago, and so I've been watching solar weather phenomenon every day just to see what's going on. And if you have been aware of what's been going on the last 3 or 4 days, there is a spike in solar influence that's coming at the planet. There were back-to-back M1 flares that came toward Earth, and you know how rare that is, because what the sun spews off goes in any direction it wishes to go. So to see them coming at us that way, and mindful that our magnetic field has been deteriorating over time, it's just a matter of time before this last phenomenon pushes Earth into where she's going next.
Thank you. And Pauline Patterson is saying, when I was there in September 2017, I saw purple see-through beings who told me they were children from Telos, though they were very tall and full of laughter. Did you see any children like this?
I did not. But again, I'll be going back soon. I did not so far, so I don't want to pretend that I did and say something that wasn't true.
Megna is asking, how often do you connect with your Lemurian guide, Alex? Can you only meet him when you visit Mount Shasta, or is the communication mostly telepathic?
Here's how I'm going to answer that. I had no idea I had the ability to do that. I just thought that it happens when it happens to me, and that it wasn't something that I could generate for myself. Oh. I began to, I think I was talking about it a little while ago, where I talked about like 2 weeks ago, I finally realized I could do that. But that came, I heard more about myself from Lemurians, from a source that I didn't see coming. And so when you hear your name uttered by channelers, it's a little disconcerting to begin with. So I'll tell you a little bit about this last instance and how this connection with the Lemurians kind of came back around to me. And it jumped past the light beings. That was last year. We'll come back to that though. Now I lost my train of thought. I'll be back in a minute. Oh, Lemurians and connecting with them. Yeah. While I was, of course, my story has gotten out there and more people have heard it. Well, there was a filmmaker in Australia. His name's Adam Rickus. And Adam has been traveling around the world filming extraordinary phenomena. And amongst his travels, he came across a young Indian man, guy lives in India, who channels higher beings, and the Lemurians were part of that. Adam went to visit him in India back in May and had heard my story. And so when he sat in front of Sam, he said, I'm curious, I know that you channel the Lemurians, and I have this, I think I know that they're from Mount Shasta and they're from within Shasta. And I heard this incredible story about this guy named Lowell Johnson who's been there. What can you tell me about the place? And Sam said, well, I don't know. It's certainly been characterized that when they broadcast, they claim they're broadcasting from Telos within Mount Shasta. So that I understand. But as for what it's like and the technologies they got, I don't know the answers to those, but I will certainly ask them in future sessions. Adam had reached out to me, and we started to, chat back and forth. And he was going to try and make his way to Shasta while I was there. So he was coming from Croatia, and it looked like there was going to be like a 2-day overlap when he got there. From the time, I'd been there until the time I was going to leave, Adam was going to have a chance to actually see the guy and touch the guy that said he'd been there, right? So when he got there and we had a chance to kind of talk a little bit, he said, I'm going to reach out to Sam again and ask him some other questions. Is there anything you'd like to ask? And I said, well, what would I ask? I don't know. But I'd sure be curious about what they'd have to say about me, right? Well, he had 3 questions he wanted to pose. And so Sam asked, first of all, Adam was going to be in Mount Shasta for about a week, and he wanted to know if he could visit Telos. The answer came back, yes, you can. And that's not saying that anybody can. That doesn't come without permission. He would be able to visit there astrally while he was there that week, but a physical thing was not in the cards for him. But again, let me emphasize, if they said yes to even that, that's significant. 2 is he wanted to know more about their technologies and all that. And what he went on to explain was that their technology is a manifestation of their level of consciousness, that you can't have technology without consciousness because creativity doesn't come from anywhere without it. Well, that was pretty damn profound. Then he went on to ask, he said, and about this guy, Lowell Johnson, what can you tell us about Lowell Johnson and how he can help in the ascension process? So Sam channeled an answer, said that as far as we can tell, Lowell is here and has been in touch with us many times through his higher being, and that it appears as though he is here to assist in raising consciousness, and that's why he's here. I'll grab my train of thought here. Earlier in the conversation, when they were talking about technology and communication and consciousness, he was explaining to Sam that the time for us to be able to understand what they were saying is now, and that they don't speak in our language, that they speak in a vibration, and that's what Sam can communicate. That's what they said at the end, which was kind of my wake-up call. And they said, Lowell possesses that same ability to understand their vibrations and be able to translate it for you, which is meant for all of you to be able to do and translate. So apparently I have another gift and a skill that I'm going to be able to explore to help others in what their understanding and what their connections with them are, and to how to describe that vibration in terms that humanity can understand.
Would that be like light language?
Well, it's funny you say that because this year I've had other messages that have come to me, and they actually all began last August when I met a person that we'll call Kumu. I didn't know who she was before. I hadn't met her before. In the end, I'll learn she's a hybrid and has connections to higher dimensions than we do, and all of the gifts and the abilities that come along with that. I was going to meet her at Mickey Magic's compound. She and Mickey had known each other for at least 10 or 12 years. They had been healers before. She has certainly been around Andaras long enough, in that Mickey was a source for that. She has been there and done ceremonies on his Andara spiral many times. But I didn't know her, and I didn't know what she was here to do. Well, the day that I came back from across country, I was due at Mickey's on that Friday. And when I got there, life just kind of takes place out on Mickey's back deck. And there's always a number of people there on any given day. When I got there, no one introduced me to her, but I just kind of felt as though here's somebody I didn't meet before, and it was just another one of Mickey's tribe. So I went over and I took her hand to just kind of, feel her energy, and there was something different. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I didn't know. So we spent the rest of the afternoon kind of getting to know one another, and she travels with a group. She has students that travel with her, that assist her in the things that she does. She's clearing energies everywhere on the planet. And she also travels with a couple other colleagues. She has a friend that, has been traveling with her for a while, and another woman who, had formerly been professionally a psychiatrist or psychologist and had heard about many of the phenomena that had happened around her and had wanted to understand it from a professional perspective. So for the last 10 years, she's been traveling with Kumu and kind of cataloging these things that have happened. It's just crazy.
And when you say she's a hybrid, how exactly do you mean that? What do you mean by that?
She's half human and half light being.
Half
from
human,
a higher dimension.
Light
Yes.
being. You don't know where from specifically.
I can explain that, but that's a whole nother discussion, and that'll be a whole another hour. And maybe we'll get there one day. But the bottom line is, on this day, when she was getting ready to leave, she started to take some photographs over on a corner of the deck where Mickey had some huge plants growing. I didn't know what she was doing until after, because after she had done that, she asked me to come over and stand behind this plant and put my arms as though they were around it. And she told me to chant these eliomes. Well, I did that until I started to feel silly. And then I turned around like I was going to stop. And then from there, she just moved inside the house so we could get out of the sunlight. Well, when she took her phone out and started to show me the pictures she had taken, she had shown me 4 pictures of these plants with light beings that she had invited in.
Oh, wow.
The last 2 pictures she took was a picture of a light being that appeared as though he had entered my third eye and had come out the back. And the last picture was like this concentration of a beam that was going in, and I could tell this is where I now get my downloads. That was Friday.
You're getting your downloads through the back?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's
we have pictures of all of it that she's taken. I put them on my website so that eventually when people said these things happened to me, when she took those photos, well, I'll have to finish what happened the next day, because she came back the next day. Nobody expected her to. No one knew why she was coming back, but the next day she was coming back. She brought enough Chinese takeout for like 3 dozen people, and she had brought 3 or 4 protective plastic cases. And in those cases, she was going to show us some artifacts that, when I asked how old they were 30,000 years old or so.
Wow.
Crazy. 3 of them were ceremonial pipes. 1 of them was a medallion. 1 was a portable time machine. Now, who gets to see these things? No one. Rarely does anybody get to see them, much less hold them, much less take pictures of them, much less use them. Oh yeah, because we're going to take a journey. We're going to use some of these ceremonial pipes, and Mickey and I are going to be invited to go on this journey. So after we did that, it got closer to the end of the afternoon again, and she invited Mickey and I to go down to where the Andara spiral was. And in the middle of the spiral, Mickey had put a statue of maybe a 4-foot tall white angel. So that's where she wanted us to stand. When we got behind it, Mickey goes, "Can you feel the angel vibrating?" When I put my hand on top of her, there was some kind of energy that was moving. And yes, I could feel it. Then I had seen what I thought it was a sunbeam. You know how when the sun hits you in the face and, it's so bright you can't see it? That's what I thought it was, until it had form. At the end of the spiral, there were 2 benches that were down there, and Mickey's girlfriend Kim was sitting at one. I could kind of see around this thing. I could kind of see Kim there, but I could not see through this light. After this was over, she showed us the pictures she had taken and the light beings that showed up then. There were other pictures she had taken along the side, and if anyone wants to see the pictures, again, I put them on my website. After she'd taken these pictures and she was going to send them to me, she said, "These are for your portfolio." And I didn't know what that meant. Well, I know what it means now, that when you get the opportunity to tell your story about this integration with these light beings, you're going to have photos to show it to people and prove it. When she left that Saturday, I still had no idea what any of this was about. I didn't know this happened. I wouldn't see these pictures until later that evening, by the way. So Mickey and I are oblivious to what any of it was. When we found out later what it meant, I concluded that what happened on Friday had to be some kind of condition I had to meet. And that when those pictures were taken and that light being made contact with me, that was what precipitated her returning on Saturday, because she had no intention of coming back Saturday. Something happened there where I must have satisfied some condition, because that's when they came back and showed up in grander fashion the next day. Now, I would meet with her in Shasta 2 weeks later.
Okay.
The conference I was going to attend would be there at the end of August. And she had planned on being there the week before with some people that she was going to meet there. And so her plan was to leave Saturday morning. I was arriving a week earlier than the conference on Wednesday. So there was a few days that we would have to get together and communicate with one another. We found a day to go up to Bunny Flats. I think wasn't until really Friday that we finally found a time to sit down. So it was mid-afternoon, took our chairs to a spot in Panther Meadows in the campsite and just sat there. For the next 45 minutes, she explained to me who she was, how she got here, what a hybrid really was. And that her father was a soldier back in the early 50s who had participated in a program, and whatever way the government or scientists got their hands on some exotic material, shall we say, alien DNA, if you want to call it that, they were looking for volunteers that would go on this program. Even Kumu's mother didn't know anything about it until she got to be about 5 years old. Then she started to exhibit some abilities and some connections to other things that others did not have. And then she was placed in a program with other kids who had similar extraordinary experiences and abilities. Now, she does not work for the government. She's been living a very low-key lifestyle, although she has been clearing negative energies all over the planet for a while. She's here for that purpose. She carries light within her and can direct it. And part of what all this was about, when that happened on 8/8, and it wasn't even until this year, when the Lionsgate came around, that all the dots connected for me. Oh my God, Lowell, when that happened, it was Lionsgate. When that happened last year. So many things became clear. And she had a couple other ceremonies that she was going to invite me to participate in. But before she did that, she had shown me a couple things while we were sitting there. And she held out her hand and had these stones in her hand. They looked like obsidian, but even in the obsidian, it looked like there was like blue and green flecks of like Andara in it. They were incredible. She told me where she got them. She said, when I got here on Sunday, I went to Middle Earth and I brought these back. So she gave me a small shard and some of the dust that was left from these in a little plastic bag. And I thought that was a really cool story. I had a chance to show them to somebody who was probably in a better position to tell me what they were. There is a shopkeeper. His name is Maziba. And he has a shop, a 1 block off the main drag, called the Crystal Matrix Gallery. And when you meet him, you can tell this guy is from somewhere else. When I took it to him, and I'd met him through Mickey before, so we knew one another, I said, somebody told me that they got these in Middle Earth. What can you tell me? And he put it under a light and he goes, oh, these actually came from the Heart Nebula. I mean, like, you mean the constellation? He said, yeah, that's where they originated from. I don't know how they got here, but that's where they came from. Then she handed me this red vial of Ethereum. And that's a whole nother discussion to have. And maybe one day we will.
I know about it.
But when I asked her what it was, she said, it's half white Ethereum and it's half light. If you want to know more about your light journey, this is for you. You're under no obligation to take it. But if you wish to proceed down this journey, this is for you. Well, I didn't think twice about it. Of course I did. In how you dose it, I was gonna ceremony with this for the next 10 days. And that somehow then would be inside me. That day, she invited me to a ceremony on a private property there where there's this energetic pyramid. And she was gonna be there with 3 other people that had joined her from Miami. Make a long story short, I thought I was going on as an observer. No, I'm the 4th wheel in 4 seats that are going to be under this pyramid. It was there that my connection with Egypt was going to unfold, where during that session, I saw myself lifting off the top of the Great Pyramid to expose the halls of Amenti for all of humanity, including those emerald tablets that had previously been forbidden. That was Friday. So when we got back to the place where these people had been staying, it was almost midnight on Friday. And she said, she was due to leave the next day. She said, there's one more ceremony I'd like you to participate in tomorrow. Just meet us here at noon and we'll all drive out. Well, I was there at noon the next day. And again, I thought I was a tag along. In the end, no, this is for you. So I was there, I was the 4th car, there were a dozen people that went. And when we got to this space, it's just north of Mount Shasta in an area where there's nothing else out there. This parcel had been acquired by a group. And so it's a veterans memorial park and it's huge. And within it, it's got a sculpture garden, which is beautiful. When you see these sculptures, they all look like 8 or 9 foot aliens. That's what they look like. So when I saw these and stood next to them, oh my God, this is like standing next to a Lemurian. This is exactly that same, scope. When I got there, the rest of the people were busy getting this area ready for ceremonies. They were, asking whatever permission they had to just allow us to proceed with what we're doing. She'd been here many times before doing ceremonies, not like this. She had pointed to one of the statues when she came over by me. She said, here, I've got some medicine for you. I want you to take your chair and I want you to just wait over there for me and then I'll come for you. And in the meantime, she's preparing the area with everyone else that was there. So when she finally came around to me, she told me what was going to happen. She said, I want you to get in your mind what it is, what questions you want answered out of this. And I had 2. One had to do with Thoth, one had to do with crystal skulls. And if what I had been led to believe was true, and one light being shows up to confirm that, I'll believe it all. I'll do whatever it is that you wish to have me do from this point on. That is what would help me understand it. So when she showed me how I was going to be oriented on the ground, what was going to happen, then she said, I want you to give me your phone because I'm going to take these pictures with your phone. So no one can ever say that they were taken somewhere else and I sent them to you. We're going to take them right here. So once I laid down, then she started to snap pictures of what was taking place, which I also put on the website so that you can see them. So if you thought the light pictures she took at Mickey's compound were amazing, wait till you see this. There wasn't one light being that showed up. There were 4 6-dimensional elders that showed up that day to pass light to me. It was a physical encounter. I could hear them. The buzzing was like the biggest hummingbird you've ever heard. But in the last session, I could feel energy passing through me when I heard this for the last time. And now I understand completely what it means to carry light and that level of light. That I'm not the only one that carries it, I'm the first one. And my job with it is to transmute negative energy into light. That's what we have. Kumu had sent me on the 8th a voice file explaining what all this was about. And it went on to describe how Earth was being influenced by this enhanced light that was coming, and how these beings were there to assist us to understand what we're to do with it. It took me a while to go back and put all those dots together and connect it before I could comprehend what any of this meant. Because even after this session and the pictures I saw after, I still didn't know what any of this was and what it was supposed to mean.
Wow.
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 Then this year, when I went back, was when some of that all got hammered in. You had asked me about light language or star language before. Yes. And so here's what all this was leading up to. Remember, I told you those artifacts all had symbols and codes all over them. And I'd taken pictures of them because in my mind, I wanted to understand what they said. And again, later, I'll pull them out of the archives and see if I can figure out what all that meant. I've had a friend who, shortly after my Telos experience that year, and I'd started to do some Zoom sessions with people that had heard one, ask me some questions. There was some friends, Lisa and Donald, who I had spent time with. And a day after I'd sat with Lisa, she said, I got this friend, Cindy, who says she has a message for you. And so the next day we arranged for, Cindy and I to meet. And Lisa said, Lowell, this is Cindy. Cindy, this is Lowell. Have at it. Cindy started to speak a language I didn't understand. And a lot of it. And at a pretty good clip. And again, I just understood maybe this isn't something I'm supposed to understand right now. I'll just tuck it away. And later on, it'll all become clear. So shortly before we were going to go to Shasta this year, Cindy reaches out again. I hadn't heard from her since the year before, so this was an unsolicited message she had for me. And it went on to speak light language, star language. I'm sorry. And I could tell that when she was channeling these entities, they were not all the same. That the pattern was different, the vibration was different. You could tell it wasn't all the same person, and she validated that after that had taken place. And I had recorded that Zoom session too, so I could go back and listen to it. After I heard it the third time, I could understand the star language, and they were all different. I then went back to pull out those pictures of those symbols I'd taken. I can understand what those were too. And not just that, I was beginning to find common symbols on more than one of those pipes. And these pipes did not come from the same place. How is it they have the same symbols on them?
Wow. Wow.
It is amazing. So as time goes on, you just wonder, what am I supposed to do with that? I'm beginning to understand it more. So when we have these opportunities to podcast and I get to share what had happened with me and show pictures of it, it's to help the others that are looking for touchstones too. Here, guys, I'm not just going to tell you an incredible, miraculous story. I'm going to show you the pictures that went along with it, because you're preparing yourself for the day that you are going to be able to do the same thing. I repeat, I wasn't supposed to be the only one. I'm the first one. And then it's my job to help others that are getting to the same place, to help them realize what they have the ability to do.
Wow.
That's almost 2 hours. Oh my
I
goodness.
know
We
that
covered a lot of ground, pal.
there are a few more questions here, so let's just quickly answer those.
I'll be happy to do it.
Let's see.
It is
No,
serendipity. Thank you, honey.
someone was asking about the hairstyles of the people you met in Telos.
Just long. It wasn't that I think I remember seeing some person that had a darker hair, but most of them, they all look Scandinavian to me.
I mean,
That was what I thought.
How they
And
carry
just straight,
hair.
long
Just
hair.
long,
Yes.
just long and straight, no fancy
Yes.
hairdos or anything.
No.
Sean is asking whether there are any access points in England or anywhere in the UK, like for example, Glastonbury tour.
I can't say personally, but I can tell you this with great certainty. Mount Shasta is not the only place where these energetic places are. They're all over the planet. That's part of the purpose for this realignment in the crystal grids that are taking place, so that those energetic places are getting lit up right now. So those of us that vibrate that way are going to know where to go. Even when I returned to Shasta, when I found a few of them the first time, I see them in many places now. And in fact, when I went back to visit after the first year, I went back I was determined to go back to that same place. And I had to do so before the road opened. So I had to hike to get up to where I wanted to go. It took me 4 hours to get there. And it wasn't necessarily the distance and the elevation changes that I had to conquer. It was that I kept seeing these little energy signatures in places that looked like they were a habitat. You know what I mean by that? Mm-hmm. Ethereal kind of habitat. It was wonderful. So I would stop to take those in. And you could tell no one had been here for a long time, if ever. And so I wanted to make a point of, I took compass headings of all those so I could find those spots again, because every iPhone's got a compass on it that'll show you your latitude and longitude. That's what I didn't think of the first trip there. But every time I find another one of these, I mark it. I drop my light there first, and then I'll take a screenshot of the compass headings so that in the future people will know where to look.
Okay. And someone is asking, Megna is asking, can we please have Sam's number? Who was Sam?
I can put you in touch with Sam. Yes. I don't know that you'll phone him because he's in India, but I'll certainly put you in touch with his YouTube channel, and you can reach out to him there for sure.
Okay. All right. Sam was the man in India. And
I also saw somebody ask about getting in touch with Kumu. That's not going to happen. And I wish it was different. She is not interested in attention.
Okay. All right. Someone is asking about your website. I can put that in my mailing, or Wesley paste it into here. So, okay, Kumu we can't do. And Megna,
thanks, Wesley.
This is so amazing. Okay, and Wesley has put the website address. So unless another message comes up, we think we can close here.
For today. It's a lot. I told you it was going to be a lot.
We took longer than last time. Wow.
Yeah. But we look at all the material we covered. And it wasn't that it wasn't, I certainly wanted to pay honor to the people who had not heard about my trip to Inner Earth and to Telos. And it was important for them to hear that. But the things that have happened all play a role in not just what's happening to me, what is going to happen with everybody else. So I've come to my own conclusions on why it was me that I get to do what I get to do. I've always been really grounded, and I have a feeling that that was part of what played into the role, look, if I was going to go through these crazy things that happen, you can't do that without being able to hold your shit together while it's going on in order for this to benefit anybody, including yourself. That had always been kind of inherent in me. And I attribute that whole meditative lifestyle just kind of got me to that place.
Magna's saying she could sit here for another couple of hours.
Well, we'll do this again. And I've started to do podcasts twice a week now on a variety of topics. Thursday afternoons at 4 o'clock Pacific time and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And those are meant to be exchanges just like this. So there'll be more. Those are official Zoom sessions. And if you want to sit in and actually exchange rather than just chat, that's what I would prefer doing. I really want to give people an opportunity to ask questions along the way instead of just hearing me just continue to tell you stories, which I'm happy to do, but it spawns questions just like here. So when I can do that in a live environment, you're welcome to go and join those. Thursdays, we will, pick a topic. But Sundays, it's more about if you want to learn a little bit more about me or questions about experiences I've had, here's your opportunity to one-on-one with me, ask the questions that you've got.
Okay, so thank you so much, Lowell.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to do it.
And I don't know, maybe if you send me are there any links for those sessions you've just mentioned? If you send those to me, I can put them in my mailing when I send that.
Absolutely. The podcasts are on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple as of today, but they're also, the videos are on my YouTube channel. So I'll make sure that you get that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, for those sessions that you're planning, which you said on Sundays.
Yeah. The Zoom is the same through the end of the year. So if you go to my website and you find Thursday, you can get the credentials for Thursday and Sunday right on the website.
It's all there already. Okay.
Yes.
I think Wesley is very quick. I think he's already dropping stuff.
He's the bomb. You're the best, Wesley. Did I tell you that yet today?
Very grateful for Wesley. Thank you for being here with us. And so thank you everyone for tuning in. And it has been truly a blessing to be your host. And if you want to, you can also drop any comments or maybe any questions that come up for you into the Warrior of Light community. And Lowell is part of that too, so we can answer them there. So I think we can stop recording here.